Revenge is on the mind of Sooner Nation as Oklahoma takes on Texas at the Red River Shootout. Here's a quick breakdown of each team's current status, keys to victory, and final prediction for the game. Let's start with Oklahoma's offensive performance against Iowa State. Dillon Gabriel bounced back from last week, throwing for over 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, rushing for 2 more, including a play where he trucked a guy on his way to the end zone. He shared the wealth, hitting a total of 10 different receivers, and although not all of his deep balls were perfectly on target, they got the job done. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. Couple this with the fact that DG seems to have stepped up to become more of a vocal leader for the team, and I think all Sooner fans will agree. Oklahoma will be in a much better quarterback situation going into Red River this year than last year. On to the run game. It just isn't consistent. Lots of lateral runs and not enough north and south. Marcus Major seems to have solidified his spot as the number 1 option, with Sawchuk getting a few carries and Walker being used minimally. Where was Barnes? Who knows, but he probably is still a little bit banged up. What we do know is the team averaged 3.8 yards per carry, and while Iowa State does have a good defense, that's just not going to get it done next week. Things need to get figured out and fast. Similar to last week, the offensive line did a great job protecting Dillon Gabriel on pass plays, but still looked a bit lost when it comes to run blocking. Give credit where it's due to Iowa State's defense, but as it nears mid-season, it's still a bit disturbing that things still just don't look right. Stoops and Farouk led the team in receptions, and Jaden Gibson had a hell of a catch, bullying his way into the end zone. Plus, Nick Anderson scored for the 5th time this year. Sophomore Brennan Thompson also had his first 2 catches of the season. This group of receivers is deep and talented with playmakers across the board. What was one of the biggest question marks coming into the season has quickly become the strongest position group along the offensive side of the ball for OU. The one thing I will nitpick, Jeff Lebby. With the game out of reach, don't run the design QB power for the 5-star freshman on 3rd and long, especially not when he has an arm. Use your brain. Overall, it's hard to complain when you put up half a hundred on Iowa State. Job well done on the offensive side of the ball. On to the defense. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't having flashbacks in the first half. The defense started off strong with a pick 6, but it went a bit downhill shortly after. Both of Iowa State's touchdowns came from mistakes in the secondary, costly miscalculations. The Cyclones were also able to manhandle the defensive line on a couple of possessions, leaving gaping holes to run through, and averaged over 5 yards a carry. Considering the Iowa State rush game had been nearly non-existent up to this point, it wasn't a good sign leading into next week. However, there are some positives to draw from the performance. Primarily that the second half adjustment was perfect, allowing a goose egg in the 3rd and 4th quarters and only 89 total yards in the second half. I've also continued to be impressed for the most part by the tackling, which is light years ahead of last season. While the defense only recorded 1 sack, the line did an excellent job pressuring the quarterback. Stutzman led the team in tackles once again, but did get banged up, although he should be good to go next week. If the Sooners were missing the quarterback of the defense, that would be an issue. Unfortunately, it was announced that Justin Harrington will be out for the season with an ACL injury, but Dasan McCullough has done an excellent job stepping up in his absence. Outside of a couple of miscues, the secondary played well and were in the positions they needed to be in, on top of picking Becht off twice. The team once again did a great job on 3rd down, holding the Cyclones to 4 of 15. Let's hope the Sooners build off their second half performance going into next week. When it comes to special teams, Peyton Bowen again impressed, blocking a punt that led to a safety. The kicking and punting teams continue to be the most disappointing unit for the Sooners, which again, things could always be worse. Unfortunately, Texas, as much as it pains me to say it, might actually be back. Offensively, the numbers the Longhorns put up last week against Kansas were outrageous, including a record-breaking 661 total yards and 336 yards on the ground, nearly doubling the Jayhawks' time of possession. At quarterback, Quinn Ewers has developed into the type of player folks in Austin expected. He has been more careful with his ball placement, throwing only a single interception so far this season, and has improved his completion percentage. While he isn't a Heisman frontrunner at this point, he is a dangerous quarterback with great arm talent and has also made a significant improvement using his legs, rushing for 5 touchdowns on the year. Speaking of running the ball, while the Longhorns no longer have star back Bijan Robinson to carry the load, sophomore Jonathan Brooks has stepped up in his absence, ranking 3rd in the nation in rushing with almost 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. He has rushed for over 100 yards the past 3 games, including gashing Kansas to the tune of 218 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an impressive 10.4 yards per carry. It was clear that wide receiver was going to be a strength of this team from the start of the season, especially with the addition of Georgia transfer Adonai Mitchell, who currently leads the team in receiving touchdowns with 4. The trio of Mitchell, Jordan Whittington, and Xavier Worthy have carried the load at the position, while first-team All-Big 12 tight end Jatavion Sanders has also continued to be a threat in the pass game. Sanders was injured last week, but signs point to him playing against the Sooners. The Longhorns' offensive line returned all 5 starters, and that continuity has paid off this season, having done a great job protecting Ewers and paving the way for Brooks so far. They will likely be without guard Cole Hudson, but DJ Campbell has stepped up into the starting role. The Texas offense has more weapons and is more seasoned than the one that completely gashed the Sooners last year. The Texas defense also played well last week, holding a Jayhawks team that had dropped 30 or more points on each of their prior 4 opponents to just 14 points, 7 of which came on a wacky run, fumble, run touchdown. And yes, we can note that the Jayhawks were without starting quarterback Jalen Daniels. Kansas was held to 0 of 10 on 3rd and 4th downs, which is a winning recipe for the defensive side of the ball. The Longhorns have held teams to just under 13 points per game, stifling opposing passers, leading the Big 12 in pass yards allowed per game, 2nd in the Big 12 in rush yards allowed per game at under 100, and leading the Big 12 in total yards allowed per game. The unit is led by a strong defensive line, including interior lineman Tavondre Sweat, who has arguably been one of the best players for the Longhorns this season. Senior linebacker Jalen Ford has continued to build off an impressive 2022 season, currently leading the team in tackles and interceptions. Highly touted freshman linebacker Anthony Hill Jr. has also played well early in his Longhorn career, recording 2 sacks and tied for 4th on the team in tackles. There is no lack of experience in the secondary either, loaded with upperclassmen, including Arkansas transfer Jalen Catalon, as well as seniors Jaron Thompson and Jadae Barron, who have combined for 3 interceptions on the year. The Texas defense should be firing on all cylinders after their beatdown of Kansas. Texas is ranked number 3 and they have been playing like they deserve it, with their closest margin of victory being 10 at Bama. It should continue to be all gas, no brakes next week against the Sooners. Keys to victory. It's no secret that the OU run game has been lackluster at best. Texas will be the most talented team the Sooners will face all season, and lateral runs won't get the job done against their athletes. If the Sooners can't get the run going, expect a tough game. Last year, Quinn Ewers had his coming out party against the Oklahoma secondary, and this year he has even more weapons at his disposal. The defensive backs will need to step up and avoid some of the mistakes they made early against Iowa State, or Texas could run away with this one early once again. I can't imagine it's possible to have a larger chip on your shoulder than the one placed on the Sooners after the beatdown Texas handed them last season. I'm sure 49-0 is posted everywhere, and both the offense and defense can use that as fuel to get the job done this time around. If you have to pick the one thing Texas doesn't do great, it would be that they sometimes take a bit to get the ball rolling during games. Wyoming and Kansas kept it close in the first half before getting blown out, and the Longhorns had an offensive explosion in the 4th quarter against Bama. I can guarantee Oklahoma will come out firing on all cylinders, and if Texas doesn't match that energy, it could prove costly. Dylan Gabriel has thrived with the protection the OU offensive line has provided for him so far this season, but they have yet to face a defense as talented as the one in Austin. If the Longhorns put pressure on DG, he may have his first bad game of the year, and if they don't, then expect the Sooners to take advantage of having QB1 this year round. If Iowa State managed to average over 5 yards per carry, it worries me to think about what Jonathan Brooks has the capacity to do. Texas has the tools to make the Oklahoma defense look like the 2022 edition, and doing so will likely wipe away any hope of Sooner fans leaving the Cotton Bowl with a smile on their faces. Last year's game was an aberration, and I will die on that hill. However, while this Oklahoma team has totally transformed on the defensive side of the ball, Texas has also made their own improvements. I don't think this Oklahoma defense will be able to contain the Longhorns' playmakers, and I'm not confident that Oklahoma has the tools on offense, specifically the run game, to outperform the Texas defense. I hate picking against Oklahoma, but
fuck it.
Yeah, there's no shot I'm picking Texas in the shootout. They could roll out prime Vince Young and Ricky Williams for all I care. It doesn't matter. Oklahoma wins this one 28-27 in an instant classic. Dillon Gabriel may solidify his place in OU QB history with a win over Texas this weekend, but where would he rank among the best quarterbacks all time for the Sooners? Check out my list here, and as always, have a great day and see y'all at the next one.